Welcome back to True Crime for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois. We're so excited to be back, right? Happy New Year if you're hearing this.
Happy New Year.
Right? We haven't said it yet. You haven't heard us say it. Happy New Year. I hope 2024 is starting really nice for you. I know for some of us, I think all of us started really good, but really, really great for Miss Christina. Hello.
Hi.
So today we're going to have Christina share a little bit with us. The title of our message today is I Am the First, where I will not be the last. Right?
That's good. I like
You
that.
like that?
Yeah. Dalton, you heard that, right?
Yes.
Where
Write that
Dalton
down.
is over us giving him.
Yes.
He's like, what are we going to call this? I'm like, whatever you want to call it, Dalton.
Yes.
Dalton has the real power here.
Listen, all the amazing descriptions you hear and
It's
the
all
things.
Dalton.
Yes, my two
So
counterparts right
grateful for
here.
him.
Yes, so that is what we're going to talk about, and not just like in certain areas, but we're going to try to touch in a couple areas of life to give you some ideas of what that means to us. So I'm going to start with Christina. So on Tuesday, right, January 9th, 2024, I believe that history was made. We actually have the first Latina woman board president for the Columbus City School Board of Education, which is a big deal.
Yes.
Right? Have you had a moment to process that yet?
Not to the extent that I think, because I've now been asked that same question probably about 5 times in the past few days. And I think just because of the magnitude of the work already that like we do every day, it still fully hasn't, sunk in terms of just, the history piece of it, the responsibility piece of it.
The extra meetings of it.
I mean, literally, it's just, and it's so interesting because, when I ran for office, you remember we talked about it, and, that was not really anything I ever thought I wanted to do.
I didn't know you could be maybe I missed it, but I didn't know you could even be like president of the board.
Yeah, it was, and I think it was, it was during the pandemic, and things were very crazy, and the kids were all going to school virtually, and as a district in the district that I represent now, I went to school here, and my kids are in the district. And so it was interesting as a kid. I never thought about who or how our schools were ran. I don't know that many young people think about that. I never thought about that. But I just always remember more so probably as I got closer to 8th grade, and then different spots throughout high school. Specifically, the first time I played basketball outside of our district, we had traveled to Thomas Worthington High School for like a summer like basketball type of thing. And I remember when we pulled up to the school, I was, I had never really been in Worthington like that. And if I did, it was like just passing through. Like it was never like we didn't hang out in Worthington, even though it's right there. And so we pulled up to Thomas Worthington, and I remember my coach, kind of giving us the rules and basically like, listen, like, don't go in here acting up, don't break nothing, just giving us all the things that coaches give. And I remember looking out the bus window, and I just was like, this is a high school? Like, it looked like a college campus. And so walking in there and seeing just, the building, the air conditioning, the, just all the amenities, their locker room set up. That was my first real kind of introduction to, okay, there are different types of schools. And, and I think at that point, that was the first seed that was planted in terms of just, there are different experiences when it comes to education. And still never really kind of made the connection that I wanted to do something, but it was just more of like, I wonder why my building doesn't look like this. And, at all. and but, I say that, I say that with all humility, because the reality is, growing up inner city and growing up in this district, I had a lot of great memories, even with the issues we had in terms of facilities and not necessarily having like access to the same things as some of the students did in the suburbs, I feel like part of what we did get, we got a real world experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, to a certain degree, I don't know that I would have been as driven as I am as an adult if I hadn't, experienced like similar, we have similar upbringings in terms of our households. But even from an education standpoint, a lot of the people that I went to school with, I remember, we was all just talking about, how we were going to get out and how we were going to make it and what we were going to do and what did that really look like. And so it's a surreal period of time just to be able to now be in a situation where I've run into teachers that I had, and some good, some bad. I've had, especially my senior year, I remember a very specific teacher. I hope she's still thriving and what have you. But, when I found out I was pregnant with Maritza, I was in senior year. And so I found out probably about October, November. And what's interesting, it was I went to go get my physical to play basketball. You have to get a physical every single time. And I went to get my physical to go play basketball. And when I went to the physical, I had a feeling something was up. And so I ended up actually not giving them the urine sample that they needed to complete my physical. And so, they came back and they were like, something was up with your labs, like, something happened. But I had a feeling and I was scared because I was like, my mom is gonna kill me. And she
Mm-hmm.
finds out I'm pregnant. And so I later on found out that I was in fact pregnant, and then the school found out. And this teacher pretty much announced to my entire homeroom class that I
Jesus
was pregnant.
Christ.
Yeah, because at the time, the district, one of the things I have to commend, our district for back then is that they were trying to find ways to make sure that, we had access to proper medical care. And, once I found out I was pregnant, I qualified for like this mobile bus that used to pull up to the school, and they would see like so many girls that were also pregnant, or if you needed some other kind of health services. And so, the bus came and they would come and go to the office and they would give the list of the students that had appointments. And then they would send someone to the classroom with a slip to tell you to go to the bus. So, this was my first visit to the bus actually. And so they come in, they give the slip, and she looks at the slip and she looks at me, and in that moment I knew she knew because the way she was looking at me.
Okay.
And she's like, Christina, the pregnancy bus is
Oh
here.
my God.
I
Oh,
this is like
world open.
everybody in my classroom just stopped. They all looked at me. And I still remember to this day, my guy friend Tyree, he was like, Tina, you pregnant? And I just started crying because nobody had knew. Like my mom knew at that point. Her father obviously knew, and like my immediate household knew. Like even
Mm-hmm.
my extended family didn't know yet. So she like announced it to my whole class. And I'm a senior.
Hmm.
And so everybody was just looking at me like, shocked. So I leave, I call my mom, she comes to the school, she handles it, and so
She has a conversation with the teacher.
she had a conversation with the principal. It was a whole thing. And so I share that because I think oftentimes, there's power in the interactions you have with different people along your journey, especially, I've had very good, empowering encounters with teachers and bus drivers. I still remember Mr. G, who would take us to and from school. And he was always like, talking to us, like, listen, when y'all get off this bus, don't be acting up. Like, he was always very intentional about anytime we got on and off his bus, he had some kind of words of encouragement or wisdom because the neighborhood we lived in was a rough neighborhood. And at that time, we were further down in Linden. I was off of Minnesota Avenue. And so, that area, just just in our neighborhood, there was a lot that was always happening. And so, I remember just really amazing people who did take the time to pour into us in different ways. But this particular teacher, and I don't know what her intention was by announcing that in the way that she did. But in that moment, I think it was more of her, just quickly passing judgment on me or passing judgment on, what was coming next. And and I carried that for a while, and people thinking like, I'm about to be a teen mom. I have all these things. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. And so, I think that being able to now be in a position that, I get to govern the largest district in the state of Ohio, it's an opportunity to, bring life experiences to legislation. Because I think a big part of what oftentimes is missing is that, people who are in elected spaces, if you've never walked in those classrooms, if you've never walked in those neighborhoods, you don't really fully understand the impact of a decision you make and the ripple effect it has on just community as a whole. And so, growing up, I always carried this sense of just, wanting to serve. As you all know, Maylin and I started this organization just to be able to serve people and to make sure that they had more support and access, so that they didn't necessarily have to, I don't want to say struggle, but you would have a leg up. You would have
And
a blueprint, a
support.
true print, right?
Yeah.
And so, so now to be in this space at this season of my life, to the conversation we had about running for office during a pandemic, which
A month before the things we do. Yeah.
the
Tell people
month
that. Tell
before,
people that.
because I really didn't want, like, I wanted to do it, but then I was like, it's a pandemic. Like, how am I going to run for office? How are we going to do this? Like, I've never ran for office before. I'm
What was
not.
the bug? I forgot like what was it, the thing that ignited you to want to run? I want to go on the call
I
to get the
think
signatures.
honestly, when the world went virtual and I kept seeing, and it's no shade to people who were in position at that time, because nobody had ever experienced a world pandemic. And but when I saw my son and my children as a whole, but more specifically my son, who is, high functioning autistic, be in a situation where he was just simply lost, not learning as much as the school was trying to keep up with everything that was happening. In my mind, I said, I can either be that parent that is just going to continue to complain, or I could be a parent and saying, well, what can I do to help you all figure it out? And so I think when the pandemic was at its height, and, I really didn't see how this was going to turn around in terms of not only economically turn around, but like, how is this going to affect? I knew when we came out of it, things were going to be bad. And I wanted to make sure that, somebody was there that had a lived experience, that could come from decision making from a community perspective, not from a political perspective, not from, a perspective of, this is what we've always done. It was something in me that wanted to say, you know what, I want to make sure when they're trying to figure out how to fix what just happened, that there would be somebody there that had an interest specifically and solely for the community and the children that are in this district. And so I remember us talking about it, and when I was like, wait, this is all due like in a month. Like, we had to have at least 400 plus, really 700 wet
Yes,
signatures.
which means like real signatures, not
Yeah.
like electronic,
Right. Like, which
like with pen.
I had
Okay.
no idea even like that's how it worked, because you would think now in a period of time where you could electronically sign, you could buy a house electronically.
Absolutely. DocuSign.
Yeah, but to run for office, you have to have actual physical signatures, addresses, and then it doesn't stop there. Then there's a whole team of individuals that have to verify the signatures and the addresses. And when they verify the signatures, like, the signature has to look like what it looks like on your driver's
Or your
license
voter
or your
registration.
voter registration. The address. So if you've moved and you didn't update your voter, that signature didn't even count.
Yeah.
And so just understanding just all the work around how a person runs for office and what you actually need to do it. Um, it was less requirements than I thought in terms of, like, credential requirements, but it was more steps than I anticipated in terms of actual the signatures, the deadlines, the money. But ultimately, God willing, we were successful in winning in a time that was just very chaotic.
Well,
But
there's a couple of steps. You had to get on the ballot first,
right.
right? And
Yeah.
depending on who got on the ballot, there may be an election in May, which thank God didn't happen.
Right. We didn't have a primary. And so we ended up going right into the general, which was that following November. And just leading up to that, there was just so much because I feel like right now, historically, suddenly, like, school boards have become a very national topic, for more reasons than one. And there is a lot of energy and emphasis as it relates to school boards right now. But I guess I grew up here and went to school here, but I never really understood the magnitude of what Columbus City Schools represents to the state. And so I honestly didn't even really absorb that until after my first year of being in office. For me, it was like, oh, I went to school here. So, but to now learn the history and the impact that this district has had on a national level, like, we have been models for other districts across the country. We have been the first for a lot of many things. So oftentimes, the media only picks up the negative of this district, but the reality is that this district has great pride, has great historical pieces of things that we've accomplished and have set trends for districts across the country.
But they don't talk about
They
that.
don't
'Cause
talk
that's not
about that.
sexy.
No,
That's not.
that don't get all the clicks and the views.
No, that doesn't get on TikTok. Okay,
Right.
guys.
Yeah.
But that's
So
good. That's good. So this is your third year.
yeah, this is year 3.
Okay.
So it's a 4-year term.
Right. Which I thought was two, guys. Also did not know. When we first got
Right.
this, I was like, I'm sorry, what you mean 4?
Yeah.
It's not 2. But last year, in your second year, you were the vice president.
Yes.
Okay, so how was that experience before coming to this?
I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to serve in leadership last year under our former president. Just being able to, like, it's one thing to be on a board, but it's another thing to suddenly, like, have a little bit extra work and responsibility. Because the reality is because the district is so multidimensional, and because we are the largest in the state of Ohio, 45,000 students, 9,000 employees, we're talking about, I mean, we have 109 buildings in the city, close to a $2 billion operating budget. I mean, it's massive. And so even to this day, I don't fully understand and know every single thing. And I don't think I ever will, and nobody does. But I recognize very quickly that, it's in collaboration that I serve and that we serve. There are people who are experts in so many different areas that are important to this district and necessary for the work. And so I was able to really, I feel like last year, just take the time to see, okay, how does this work? And what I found was it's truly about partnerships. It's truly about relationships, and it's about being, rooted in why you're even there to begin with. And so I feel like last year as VP, it gave me an opportunity to see more of, just the foundational pieces of running a board, and understanding really the full complexities of a district our size, but also reaffirming for me, why I chose to run, and ultimately what I want to continue to contribute even, while I'm here.
That's awesome. So your ceremony was beautiful. You had a judge actually swear you in. Tell me about this judge and who she is and how did you meet her?
Yeah, so Judge Maylin Sambois is also newly elected as the first Latina justice of the Supreme Court. So,
For Ohio.
for Ohio, and she is the first and only Latina in the Midwest that serves in that capacity. And so when you think about the, I recognize the symbolic piece of the first, but you would think in 2024 we still wouldn't be in a place of having the first. And so I met Judge Sahas on her campaign trail and had a very brief encounter with her, to be honest. Like, it was just listening to her, she's also Puerto Rican and from New York, and just hearing her upbringing and her story and her passion, also a product of public schools. Her mother only went to seventh grade. And so, she is truly an example of someone who came from nothing and, but is also very humble and grateful for her upbringing, which I feel like you and I are similar. Like, even though we didn't have a lot, and we certainly didn't come from all of these opportunities, we're okay with that. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
would have been, I would have liked a little, something extra.
No
I mean,
sazon.
a little song would have been great. But I mean, I think that,
It
it's,
made us who we
yeah,
are.
it made her who she
Yeah.
is. And so, one of the things that I instantly loved about her spirit is like, she, that title, although it's something to be proud and it truly is a remarkable opportunity, it doesn't define, who she is at her core. And so when I learned of the opportunity to potentially move up in this space, I knew I was going to be the first Latina president of this district. I didn't realize that I would be the first on the state level. But I also was like, I want to be intentional about what this swearing in ceremony was going to look like. I didn't know Judge Zaha's was going to give the remarks she gave. That I wasn't prepared for, but I'm so internally grateful that she did, because a lot of what she said reaffirmed for not only me, but I think, the thousands of people who have watched that video. I've gotten a lot of messages of people who, I think it's important to tell the story of where you come from and how you got to where you are, because oftentimes when you don't, and I think I've always been more, I'm a very private person. I'm not really big on, having the world in my business. But I feel like what I appreciated about her opening remarks and saying what she said, it reaffirmed for every woman, every girl, whether you are somewhere right now struggling, or you come from, an economic disadvantaged household, or you're a teen mom, or, your mother never passed seventh grade. That does not mean that you can't be the next, or, you can't be a person of influence. You can't be an elected official. You can't be a CEO, because I think oftentimes the way the media and the world has presented all of these really, really fancy, important people, it's almost like it's a certain pedigree. You come from money, you come from academia, you come from social class. And so when you see people like us who have, been able to take, oranges and make lemonade, it's a reminder that, if it's God's plan and you stick to your why and you stick to who you are at your core, all things will happen. And so it was really, hearing her, having her there, and her actually being able to do it. And that's the power of relationships. That's the power of mentorship, because I didn't even have her phone number. I called a mentor. I told her ideally what I would like to see. She was like, I know somebody that knows her, like knows her. And so a call was made, and then another call was made. And then I got the call that she wanted to talk to me directly. And we had all of a 10-minute call. And she was like, I'll come. And she came, and she organized, rescheduled her whole thing just to be in Columbus that day. And then came and swore me in. And I think she returned to Cleveland.
She
And
left right
yeah,
after
she left
that.
right after that. And so that to me, regardless of where my political career takes me, that alone, that filled me enough. So I'm really grateful. And, now as she mentioned, to be the first and to now be able to just, be able to be an example for other Latina young girls, or even women, just women who, in general, whether you're Latina or not. I think it's just the power of, celebrating one another, supporting one another, which is the premise of the work you and I do with Femergy. I think it was symbolic for more reasons than one.
It was. It was beautiful. I was ugly crying and they want to take a picture. I said, it's not time to take a picture, but it's fine. I'll do it for the picture.
I couldn't. I'm surprised. I started to like tear up, and then I had to like
Get it together.
Because I knew I had too much to do, and so it was like, because you know me, I can cry. I'll
Oh,
cry right now.
I was she is the cry. Everybody else was crying, but I knew she was in like, I have to get certain things done mode, and she'll cry later.
I'll cry. I was literally like, when she started, I was like, don't you dare. I was literally talking to myself. I was like, Christina,
your makeup.
You gotta speak after this. You gotta do a motion after this. Like the whole time, I'm like,
you had a press conference right after.
I did have a press conference right after. So the whole time, I'm like, you can't cry, because I knew I wouldn't be able to like pull it together, because it just was, and I heard my mom crying on the side of me. Like I heard like a sniffle, and I was like, I'm not even gonna look at her.
Don't look at her.
So I was like, I'm not gonna look at her. I'm just gonna stay straight right here. And it was interesting because that night I texted my mom, and I said, you know, thank you for your support. I wouldn't be here. And I said, tonight was our win. And when I talked to her, I felt bad. I didn't get to talk to my mom for like 2 days after that. Ended up calling her, and she was like, you know, I got to talk to the judge. I ran out to the parking lot. I wanted to just to thank her. And she said something to me, and she said, you know, you know, your daughter, this is symbolic of the work that you've put into her to get her. And so when I texted her that this was our win, the judge had said something very similar to her. And so you think about the shoulders we stand on.
Oh my God.
The things that we've accomplished are our great grandmother's wildest dreams. You know, the fact that we, you know, have businesses, and we're
in our building.
We're in our building right now, you know, and you know, I'm leading a district, you're leading, you know, in so many spheres. I mean, it's just, we truly are our ancestors and our grandparents, great grandmothers. I mean, if you just go back 3 generations, you know, my grandmother, you know, God rest her soul, you know, she also didn't finish school. She worked in a tuna fish factory in Puerto Rico, and actually as a teenage girl working in that factory, slipped and had a concussion. And they, you know, didn't even take her to a hospital. They took her, you know, they took her home, and she ended up having multiple seizures. And because of that experience, ended up paralyzed on part of her body, which then, you know, only added to the challenges she later developed in life. So when they did a CAT scan, I remember they did a CAT scan on my grandmother's brain, and they showed my mom. They said more than half of the cognitive part of my grandmother's brain was not functioning properly. And so it was in that moment my mom was like, my whole childhood now makes sense.
Yeah, because it didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense. You know, like, how can a person be this way or not, you know.
If they love me, why they treat me like this? She was not right.
And we believe it's because of the injury she had in that tuna fish factory. But because, you know, just when you grow up a certain way, poor, you don't have access, you just, you know, go back to work, you don't ask too many questions. That impacted her, my mother, and then even me. And so that's 3 generations right there. And so to now be in a space that we can talk about health equity, we can talk about economic equity, we can talk about leadership, we can talk about, you know, so it's just who we are and what we represent right now is bigger than us. And it's bigger than just the work that we're doing. It's the sacrifices from the women before us that, even though it's hard right now and it's not perfect, it was harder for them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Like we're riding on a Mercedes right now. If you compare it to their life,
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anytime I want to complain, I'm like, I need you to calm down.
Right. I mean, when you think about, you know, you can wake up and you can go make your coffee, and you know, you have a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood. And, you know, even me, like when I wake up, I walk in.
We both have a beautiful home.
I have a beautiful home. I mean, this, you know, my neighbor's houses are low, but you know.
But your house is beautiful. Let's focus on what we got.
God willing. I mean, I'm grateful. But, you know, I just, even that, you know, just waking up and, you know, my children are home and they're safe and they're healthy. And, you know, I can walk into my closet like, what do I want to wear?
What can I wear today?
Yeah, what do I want to wear today? You know, and I mean, those are things that we have now has become normal to us, not recognizing that these were things that past generations were just trying to have, like the basic essentials.
Yeah, the minimum.
Yeah. And so I feel really grateful. I recognize the shoulders we stand on. And I think for me, it's just about continuing to lead in, authenticity, lead with just true and transparent intentions. And, God willing, just to continue to guide my steps. And, I don't know what the political realm holds, but for right now, I'm grateful for where I'm at, and I look forward to what we can accomplish together as a community. It won't be an easy thing. It won't be an overnight thing, and that's what I keep reminding people because my phone has not stopped ringing
So now that
since.
you're president, can you please book a Starbucks on this
Oh
real
my
thing?
god, it's like
I'm
crazy.
sure.
The request I literally got a request if I can start a mariachi program at the district. I was like, excuse me, what makes? I think it's a great idea, right? But I
But
don't
it's
have
not
that kind of
you.
power. Like I
Yeah.
just don't know. But but it's great. And it's funny. Before we wrap up, I have to share. My son, so at the swearing in, my family was there. You all were there. And so my 10-year-old, Adrian, he was there. And so that evening I got home, and as soon as I closed the door, he comes running upstairs and he was like, Mom. And I said, yeah. He was like, you didn't tell me you were the president. And I was like, yeah, Puppy, I'm the president. He was like, so does that mean we get to move? And I said, well, where are we going? He was like, well, the president lives in a big house, like a White House. And I said, no, I'm not that kind of president. And he was like, so what kind of president are you? And I was like, trying to explain to him. And so now he keeps telling everybody that I'm the president. And so, I went to get him the other day, and one of the teachers there, she was like, your son is so excited that you're the president. And I was like, yeah, but he thinks I'm a different kind of president. So I just love to see that even the kids, because, if I do have to be gone as much as I'm gone, I want them to know I'm gone doing, impactful things. So I try to incorporate them in anything like this just so they can see that I'm not like just kicking it somewhere on the side. And I think they understand a little bit more as to like what all of this means and kind of what mommy is doing when I'm gone. But I love the fact that we got to do that together as a family.
Yes, and I love that he's already manifesting you at the White House. I think Adrian is into something.
I don't
Everybody,
know.
get your wallets ready. We're gonna be fundraising for a campaign in a few years.
I don't think I could handle that kind of pressure.
We don't know. We don't know. I think the district is doing a real good job of training you. So I'm not going to say that
Oh
you will be able
Lord.
to do the whole country. But before we wrap up, I think something we said in the beginning was, you are the first Latina president of this board. The judge is the first judge of the Supreme Court in Ohio. But how do we help that you're not the last, right? Because
Yeah.
we had a Latina on the board for 15 years or so, and you're the second Latina after 15 years, which I think it's great. But I'm kind of sad to even know that there was no more Latinas that
Yeah.
even knew that was a possibility.
Yeah.
So and not just in politics, right? Because we can use politics as an example, as a true print, but how can we support in ensuring that you're not the last, right? You're the
Yeah.
first, but you're not the last.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head, right? That word you said, support. I think oftentimes, we are also busy trying to get ahead. We're also busy trying to get in position and stay in positions, that we do not take the time to think about who can we bring along with us. So I think it's important, especially just from a generational succession planning perspective. It's like, yeah, you might be there 20 years, but at some point you will leave. And then what happens to, to the work? What happens to the representation? Just from from a standpoint of just being able to pass it forward. So I think a big part of what I would like to see, and this is something I'm going to challenge myself with, it's like, okay, now that I'm here, who can I be, mentoring, whether it's a Latina or not. It's something that I need to be intentional about. And I think as community members, whether it's the political realm, whether it's taking over a church, whether it's taking over a business, whether it's just growing a department, taking the time to, even if you didn't get that in this season, I didn't get that in this season. And even now, it's still like very scarce in terms of just from a Latina standpoint. Like I can count on one hand, other Latina women that, I've connected with that I've really been able to shape or influence or impact me directly. And so that's something that I think we really all should be charged with, especially if we want to continue to see progress and change. Because right now, I'm concerned that a lot of the progress that was made over the years is going backwards.
What they're trying to.
Yeah, and I mean, they've been successful. If you look at a lot of the legislation that has been overturned in this past year, and these are things that were historically done, like just Roe versus Wade. And so, just when you think about, women's rights being questioned, when you think about, just what we're seeing right now, I mean, there's so much out there. I think we have to be very, very careful not to get comfortable with some progression.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have some representation. Now you got two. Be
Right.
be be happy and go have a seat. It's more than just being able to check a box. It's a lived experience. So yes, like and that's why I think people sometimes have a hard time. Well, why does it have to be about representation? Why does that matter? I can read about a person's culture, but I will never firsthand understand what it's like to have family members who don't speak the language, who don't even understand, how to pay their bills, how to sign their children up for school. You will never understand just the trauma and the impact that a family goes through. As I mentioned with my grandmother, what she went through in Puerto Rico and what, my mom went through and what, my tias and all them went through, that's a lived experience. And so when you talk about creating policies and impacts for people that are a part of those communities, it's hard for you to really be able to have influence over something you've never experienced. And so that's why representation is so important. Not that somebody couldn't come and do it better. It's not about being better. It's about being able to be authentically effective. And I think that that's a perspective that each of us carry in different ways. You more so than anyone. You've had a very different lived experience from, even coming here from the Dominican Republic and just even what you are presently in the work that you do right now. I mean, that's an experience that I can talk about it, I could study it, I could read it, I could give you all the stats, I could give you all the information. But the reality is you will be able to speak to and about because of you're rooted and you've experienced it in different ways. So that's why representation is so important. And so I think it is our responsibility to support our young people, to really make sure that they understand, and not only just our young people, just making sure that we are also not contributing to mindsets and behaviors that take the work backwards. And so
Yeah.
it's a collective shared responsibility.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we're like, well, I'm here, and that's good. We have one Latina, one African American. But I look at the Columbus City School Board, especially that day, and I said, this is amazing. We have Christina as the first Latina president. We have the other lady that, that's there too. But we don't have any Somalis. Like
Right.
we don't have representation at that table of what the school looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's like if you're not Somali or you're not from a certain
Nepali,
right,
right? Yeah.
then you making policies based on a certain group of kids, and you're not even thinking about the other
Mm-hmm.
kids, right? Where someone from
Right.
that lived experience can say, actually, this would really hurt our community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just hoping that in the years to come, we either add more members, and
Yeah.
just have a more diverse
Yeah.
board. I think that's my
Absolutely.
dream.
Right. Diverse board, committees. Even if you're not interested in being like a full on board member or being in leadership, join a committee, join, a group, a PTA, a PTO, like anything that you can just make sure that your community is represented in those rooms and conversations, because no one's going to go out and find you. We want to see changes, we want to see things done differently. We have to be willing to go outside of our comfort zone and advocate and make sure that that happens. Even if it's not you, support somebody who is doing that work. If that's a person that you believe in their ethic, you believe in what they're saying and doing, just watching from the sidelines and not supporting or only saying something when things are wrong, that's also something that, it's not benefit. It doesn't help anybody, So I think it's a shared experience. It's a shared, responsibility, and certainly, I think that's where going back in the day, it takes a village. You know, I don't know what happened to the village. The village looks a
Can
little
we find
different
the
now.
village? There's a book
We gotta
out. I saw a
reactivate
book
the
about
village.
that.
I don't know. This is not
Let's
the
get the
same
village
village,
back.
but we gotta reactivate the village.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
so.
do. We do. Well, if you are listening and you want to be the first of something, now you have amazing representation that it could be done. If you want to be the second, third, or fifth or something, right? And you don't know how to do it, I think you should look at who's doing it and reach out, right? And see if that person is willing to mentor you and help you get to where you want to go. So that is all for today. We could go on, but you know, our tag here.
It's like wrap
It's
it
time for
up.
us to wrap it up. Like we always say here,
It's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.